Hey there, fellow adventurers. Welcome to Tryst with a Werewolf. Are you ready to step into a world where the line between human and beast blurs? Here, Squain. We'll uncover the hidden tales of werewolves, their forbidden love, and their wild adventures. So come along and let's embark on this thrilling tryst together. Chapter 36, Meeting the Alpha King 27 Bullets. We ran and ran, only stopping for water and food breaks. And oh, my wolf loved taking that demonstrage down and tearing right through it. I might have been disgusted if my human body wasn't already craving the raw meat. And even though we had been running like a high-speed train all day, my wolf barely felt out of breath. Maybe a bit of panting, but nothing that mentioned that we just flew over some 10 whole mountain ranges. Go, Wolfie power. The boys started trotting, slinking down into the grasses as we reached a higher hill and we all peered over the summit still in wolf form. The sun was just dipping toward the horizon. We made it before moonrise. There was a city below, much like the set from some medieval movie. A high rock wall surrounded the area. Small, thatched roof houses lined the streets, all pointing to the wide, open center with a courthouse mansion with tall rock pillars and steps to a terrace out front like a stage. And all the people gathered to watch it. Men of ages from roughly 20 to 60 stood in the city center, all deliciously handsome, like they were Photoshop come to life. Most nearly naked, only wearing the Tarzan strips to hide their manhoods, some with long pants. But all shirtless and barefoot. They stood watching someone who was not. A towering man stood like a sentinel at the top terrace. He was covered in furs and black leather and built like a tank. Heavy muscles still shouted their presences from under the layers of clothing, and the stern set of his jaw gave him a tortuous expression of fierceness. Black hair tied back at the crown of his head, strong cheekbones and pointed nose. He had to be the kin. He held the formidable aura of one. Though I wasn't afraid of him. I knew I could stand beside him and not cower, even from this far away. King Maza, my mate. I mean, I guess he looked okay, but I didn't feel any stirring of adoration for him yet. Just those feelings you get when you see a really hot movie star on the screen. A growl caught in my throat as I spotted a woman with platinum blonde hair attached to him with a chain. She was average build and nearly naked. A basic dirty white bra and a torn golden leather skirt were all that covered her. Max Spidey, my fated mate. Lights flashed around me and my wheels spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. That had to be Molly. Be quiet, Kane admonished. We're pretty far back, but they still might be able to hear. Sorry. I scowled, uneasy to see any woman greeted like that. There's Maeve. They've got him above the tank. My eyes followed theirs and saw across the stage a giant glass tank of clear water, a few purple petals floating within. A hog-teed man lay balanced on a wooden plank above it. He was strong and rigid. Muscles like the heaviest of bodybuilders and neatly trimmed dark hair like a usual Earth style. Shirtless, wearing the same type of golden soft leather pants that Kane and that N wore. The plank was nearly a swing, held with ropes attached to the ceiling of the overhang and then tied to the wall. Two guards with daggers attached to either side of their belt pouches stood beside. The planks weighed as if the men were ready to let the ropes fly and have him drown at any moment. Then N gulped. Is that wolfsbane waters? Kane's whole wolf grimaced. With the petals? I'm guessing so. Wolfsbane waters? I asked. Wolfsbane was mentioned in the Earth stories that hurt werewolves, but I never heard of wolfsbane waters. Then N growled out loud. The poisonous berries that hurt your arm. They flower in purple bunches near water. That water soaks up their poison and will kill anything it comes into contact with. It's also how skunks get their poison. I remembered the spring-fed pool next to the berries I found and shuddered. It didn't kill me, but sure gave me a wicked sunburn where it touched. Yes, I didn't have enough contact because it sure killed the plants I soaked with my extra balls. And you were human. Might be more deadly now that you're a wolf. As for Maeve, one lung if you Ellen, it will kill him instantly. He's probably smart enough to hold his breath, but barely a minute and we'll boil him alive. We all gasped as one of the ropes slipped and its knot and Maeve fell a few inches, the plank swinging wildly as he tried to right his balance. Molly shrieked and I could even hear her grief from where I was crouched as she cried for his release. The man I suspected was Muzza also let out his own shriek that they were waiting for the moonrise to drop him and chase and to tighten the rope. One guard sped to knot the ropes tighter. I growled a loud sound, not even caring if anyone from the village heard me, and slid from the summit. I immediately shifted to human like I'd done it 1,000 times and tossed on my clothes, then started loading my gun. Benin followed and shifted too. "Elle, be quiet. Not likely." I snapped and crawled back to the summit, setting the rifle scope to my eye. Muzza was pointing our general direction and calling for some guard to check it out. I didn't care and aimed at the rope that tied Maeve's hands and feet. It was an easy shot as long as Maeve stayed as still as he was. I prayed he did. I let out my breath and squeezed the trigger. 26 bullets. The rope unraveled instantly and Maeve's extremities were free. In another instant, 3 more bullets were shattering the glass tank under him. Water sloshed into the crowd with men and guards dashing away to avoid the toxic liquid. 23 bullets. The crowd was gazing into the sky and murmurs of cloudless thunder spread. Maeve, fully free from the ropes, jumped down and darted forward for Molly. Muzza called the guards and they grabbed at Maeve's arms and a dagger went at his throat. Muzza grabbed Molly up and held her tight against his chest, putting a dagger to her throat as well. Maeve reluctantly submitted, stilling his fight against the guards. "Let's go," I told the 2 wolves and started trotting to town. Thann transformed human and both quickly set off after me. I met the scent guard on the way and as he called for me to halt, I blew him a kiss and waved my fingers. He stood stunned, frozen as a statue. A barely audible she-wolf whispered from his lips. "I just walked us by." I'm sure he was utterly astonished by my absolute beauty. The thought made me grin, so when we finally got to the city center, I was still smiling. A loud voice boomed over the area. "Moonrise is in 40 minutes. He will still be killed. Actually, let's pass on that killing today. Shall we, Muzza baby?" I called loud over the crowd. The people startled and turned, each backing away, opening a pathway straight to King Muzza. Muzza's eyes were fully on me and the 2 flanking me. "Honey, I'm home," I shouted, stopping in the middle of the townsfolk. "Who are you?" Muzza eyed me suspiciously, furs around his shoulders ruffling. Okay, so with those fiery dark eyes and wicked jaw, he had something going for him. He was hot. I'd admit it. I sighed, a spectacularly fake sound. "You don't recognize me, baby." I lifted a hand to the pointed branch that kept my hair up in a bun like chopsticks and let it fall to the ground. Shuffling my head back and forth a few times, I let my hair cascade clear down my back. I hoped I looked like some total beach babe. Then my eyes speared on Muzza, gaze forceful and words intense. "She's not the woman of thunder." "I am," and I cocked my rifle and let a deafening bullet shoot into the sky. 22 bullets. Undramatic. Sue me. Eyes from all around me also shot to the sky, the blaring sound of fake thunder hushing the crowd. One by one, men started falling to a knee. IWW, thanks guys. I cooed at the sexy villagers. I turned back to Muzza and giggled, gesturing around. My fans. So cool. Even from this far, his greedy eyes raked me over like I was the finest treasure. It made my stomach feel weak. All right. The mate's stuff could be kinda neat. One could get used to being treated like a queen. "Come up here, my beloved." Muzza's voice was rich and seductive, but he was also still holding a knife to a woman's throat. No, he bristled, teeth showing. I motioned to the two. You've got my friends. Let them go. Friends. He laughed and set his dagger to instead point to the guards holding me. Fine. The challenger is free to go. But Alpha, one exclaimed, free to go. Maz's anger resonated through the square. Both guards bowed low and daggers came away from Maid's throat. Maid's hands came to massage the spot and he stepped toward Molly, eyes only on her. She was immediately pulled back by the chains and dagger again to her throat. Not her, though. Maz's voice was low and deadly. She's mine. Maid growled out a war cry and shot forward. The dagger pressed to break the skin, a dribble of blood dropping down Molly's neck. Maid froze when Molly's scream filled the air. I roared out a fierce sound. It carried over the heads of the kneeling men. Let them both go now. Maz's eyes came back to me, dagger point still at our jugular. I said I'd let your friends go. Females are not friends. And what are they? Property. My property. I folded my arms, ready for the fight, and then Enon came flanked me. You owe no one. Now let Molly go. Her eyes traveled to mine when I spoke her name. My glance silently told her I would get her out of this. Maza chuckled. I owed all the women. Guards, he called. A few moments later, a group of women all chained together were marched on stage from somewhere inside the house. Some were completely naked, others had light robes, but all were covered in bruising and pain. Maza let a kick fly to one woman and she tumbled down, bringing the women beside her to their knees as well. My temper flared with tightness in my chest. You let them go right now. You don't make commands to me. Beloved, they are all mine. And now, you are too. I lifted my rifle and pointed it at Molly. She's got a gun. One of the chained girls cried. They all went hysterical, and Molly twisted in Maz's grip. Marakspy, my faded mate. Lights flashed around me and my wounds spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. I called, stay still. Her eyes met mine, blue and deep. She yelled. Maz's fist went into her mouth and she choked at the punch, but held her wrists out for me to shoot through. Instead, I aimed for the dagger at her throat. When I had a good shot, I fired. 21 bullets. The bullet cut through the dagger, shattering it in Maz's hand. As he was momentarily distracted, I shot at the lock of her wristbands and the bullet broke through her constraints. 20 bullets, boom. I love this excellent shot wolf stuff. May snatched her from Maz's wrath and wrapped himself around her. A guard's dagger went into his shoulder blade, and he roared out in pain. Teeth transformation. Bullets then went in each guard's arm. 18 bullets. The second guard dropped his dagger, both holding over their bicep where a bloody hole was shot into them. They would heal, if they didn't keep fighting me. Kane ran the stage and ripped the dagger from Maid's shoulder. Then he helped Maid get Molly off the terrace and ran for the streets of town. Maid caught my eye and gave a nod of appreciation. I nodded back. Maza was watching me, a glimmer of gleeful craze in his eyes. You control the skies to do your bidding. Shrugging nonchalant, I let the rifle dip, but still ready for action. I also came here riding a giant metal wolf and to make fire with my fingertips. I'm amazing. He held his arms out. Your friends are free. Now come to me. Marakspy, my fated mate. Lights flashed around me and my wounds spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. Yeah, I don't think so. I deadpanned and pointed to the rest of the bunch. What about those girls? His eyes slit Ted. They are also your friends. I rocked on my gun, like it was a walking stick. It was a dangerous move, but I'm the H-up. Us Earth chicks stick together. Let me see your fire, he commanded instead. I shrugged and dug into my pouch for the lighter. I held it up and flicked the trigger. A small flame shone into the sky. Maz's grin reached his ears, in some spooky Grinch fashion. Oh yes, my beloved. You are quite exquisite. Ouch. I dropped the lighter when the metal burnt my finger. I bent to pick it up, not worried about anyone seeing the device, and flicked my burned hand a bit to cool the sting. What the? Maza cried and the crowd started murmuring, huh? I looked around and then down at my fingers. They were turning wolf. Oh, oops. Sorry. I'm not quite in control yet. I shook them back, human no. Maza growled out and took a deep breath in, scenting the air and surely trying to smell me. The oracles never foretold of you being a she-wolf. All the she-wolves are dead. I spoke unabashed. Not all. They are dead. For 100 years. I killed them. How did you survive? My eyes set on him, momentarily stunned. Excuse me. You what? You killed all the she-wolves. Where have you been? He thrust his fist down his side, face turning scarlet. Dude, step back. I'm not from your planet, and I was told it was a sickness. I glanced back to the Thann. Him and Kane had mentioned their history during our run. Muzza flashed a fully devilish grin. A village much like this one had women dying of all ages. My father sent me and some guards to scope the problem. The head parasitic goat had contaminated the water supply. I knew that the woman of thunder would show herself when no women remained. It was my chance to hurry the prophecy along. I told father that we couldn't tell what happened to the village. The goat was then taken and torn apart, a small piece in each water supply around the world. Soon enough, the liquid death flooded everywhere, and I waited for your arrival. I was horrified. Bad Spidey, my faded mate. White splashed around me and my wound spun with the beat of heavy techno music the DJ was playing. Bad Spidey, my faded mate. White splashed around me and my wound spun with the beat of heavy techno music the DJ was playing. Yelled a disgusted man from the crowd, raising to his feet. My daughters. Yelled another. The queen. Uttered the guards holding the women. The king died in her heartbreak. A long-haired guard at the side breathed out. Maz's hand swayed in the air, unconcerned. Yes, yes. The king. The queen. Mother wasn't going to make me the strongest alpha this world would ever know. Only my walk Yuduma could do that. The crowd were all raising to their feet, angry expressions flaring and shuffling forward, about to start something, when Maz's voice thundered over them, power backing his words. Stop. Calm yourselves. A collective breath was taken from all, including me, and the men's angers pacified. I looked around, confused at the sudden cooling. Muzza looked unabashed. We've all made sacrifices, but our precious star is here now. But N then spoke from behind me, voice low and carrying. There was no part of the Woman of Thunder's story that included all the women being gone. Muzza just chuckled. Their eyes went piercing black, watching men N. My grandfather had many oracles recite the prophecy. She would come when no other women remain. You think that pathetic story mothers told their children was the truth. That was a fairy tale. Much was left out. I just let enough of the story out to make sure the brave young warrior brought her to me. Then inhaled. Maz's head tilted as his eyes roved over my body. Granted. Even pieces of the prophecy were mistaken. I did not know she would be a she-wolf, and I was expecting her leg to be quite injured. But no matter. She is here now. Come, my beloved. Screw you. I spat. Why would I want to be the beloved to someone who killed every woman on a planet and then tortures all the women brought in to save them? His lip curled and fists clenched. Because you're mine. Dude, I don't think I want to be yours. He was tired of playing games and shouted at me. Get up here now. Maratspai, my fated mate. Lights flashed around me and the room spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. Immediately my feet started moving without my consent, step by step toward the stairs. Hey. What's happening? Maza grinned in morbid pleasure. Then N grabbed my arm to stall me and Maza hollered out at him. Let her come. He released me like touching a scalding stove and I started walking again. A deep purpose of inferno shot from my belly and caressed down my arms in metaphoric dragon fire. I will not. And I stopped at the first step to the landing, breathing deeper than I had running clear from the cave. Maza's shock only shone for a second before he masked himself to calm interest. You can disobey alpha commands. Impressive. Beloved. He looked to the crowd. But they can't. His voice then heightened. Bring her to me. The men surrounding me then converged as one swarming group, and the moment one's hands were on me, I screamed, Don't touch me. And they stopped, frozen in place. Forever. Maza commanded again, no. I glared at the surrounding men, and each dropped their head in submission and stepped back. I turned to the stairs. Hell, looks like they'd rather follow their queen. You can give commands. He looked both shocked and impressed. Chimney, cried a woman as she pressed forward as much as her chains would allow. And a man called out from near me and ran to her. A guard went to kick the man away and I hollered, Don't you dare. And his foot stopped. The two embraced, telling words of comfort under their breaths. Let them go. I demanded the guards. I aimed my gun to sever the women's chains, waiting for the women to calm down for a clear shot. No, Maza contradicted and spun black and eyes on me. You are not the Alpha King. I will be obeyed. Get used to it. Mozzarella. I scowled. I would not let him live like that. His eyes flamed and he pulled a full sword from somewhere on his person and slammed the blade down over the embracing man and women, taking off both of their heads. I gasped in horror. I will be were his last words. A bullet went in his brain, and he collapsed backwards to the ground. 17 bullets. The surrounding area went silent as the last of the rifle's sound echoed around us into oblivion. My rifle still aimed at the dead beast. A random man from the crowd was first to break the silence. You killed the Alpha King. I shouldered the gun and snarled. You're darn right I did. Hums started up from the crowd and I took the steps to the landing. I pointed to the guards. Let the women go. They raced to fulfill the order, unlocking the bands. A handful of men from the city square ran the steps that embraced women, some kissing, some wailing in sadness of their fallen friends, some holding in hugs. One man robbed to the knees of a woman I didn't realize was pregnant and caressed her belly. She was just showing like I was, probably similarly far along. I turned to the first guards I'd shot. Do you need medical attention? Why, yes, Alpha. One spoke. She can't be the Alpha. The long-haired officer from just offstage outraged. I can and I will. I spoke unconcerned as I came upon the two. We need to get the bullets out. It will hurt. Do you know where pain medicine is kept? Just do it. The second spoke, holding his head back gallantly. I nodded and let my fingertips transform to claw points. Forgive me. And I dug into the second's arm, clasping the bullet between my elongated claws as his holler reached the clouds. I tore a strip of cloth from my skirt and quickly covered the wound. He nodded, teeth clenched. I gave him a single nod of acknowledgement and focused on the first man. I'm ready. He stood tall. His body clenched in pain, but no sound blared as I dug his bullet out and it tinkered to the ground at our feet. Another strip was ripped from my skirt and tied around his arm. Thank you, Alpha Wakuduma. I gave a reassuring smile. Find healing medicine if you can. But I was interrupted by the same long-haired officer. She can't be the Alpha. Because I'm a woman. I flipped to him and studied him up and down. He was a fine specimen of man. nearly as massive as was but a gleam on as I spoke of true intentions. Or because you want to be alpha? He beamed a breathtaking grin and stepped toward me, kneeling at my feet and caught my hands in his. If anything were to ever happen to the Alpha King, it is written that the Beta should take his place. And let me guess, I'm staring at the Beta. He pressed a tender kiss to my hand as he stood. Beta and Dota, yes, I Billy at your service. Madam. I looked him over. He was tall and gorgeous, longer hair than any man in the crowd, and it did make me pause. I'd always been a sucker for long hair, full chest, bright smile, sexy eyes. He did have the presence of someone extremely powerful. It's written for you to be king. He nodded and touched delicately over my face, sliding a piece of hair away. And you will be my mate. You're my mate, I questioned, trying to look solidly into his eyes. They shone with an affectionate intensity. Yes, we will be mated. And you will make me the most strong and powerful alpha this world has ever known. So I stalled. You knew I was your mate the moment you looked upon me. Of course. Mad Spidey, my fated mate. Lights flashed around me and I was spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. He stepped forward, reaching hands gripped over my hips, and I waited for him to expound. He didn't. I stared deep into his eyes and waited for the spark of recognition to take him over. But it didn't. Kane said he knew the moment him and Amada Oke's eyes connected. He said I'd know the moment our eyes connected. It wasn't there. I leaned up and kissed softly at his cheek. I'm sure you'd make a great king. He beamed the compliment and turned to the crowd, arms lifted in celebration. Behold, you're new. But, again. He twisted back in confusion, and I pulled up my shirt, just enough to show the growing baby bump to the crowd. Collective gasps and whispers started around the area. I don't think you like a woman who has already made their choice. My voice lifted in power. I choose Yen Awathandu as the new Alpha King. I choose him as my mate. Ben N was still at the base of the stairs and fell to the ground, hollering out in pain. I made the smallest movement to dash to his side, but stopped as his body fought to transform. He was becoming his wolf. Bones shattered, vocal cords lengthened, hair sprouted, teeth grew, feet elongated. A whole minute of blaring agony. The sounds quieted and then N's wolf stood. A howl soared to the skies, and standing before us all was the tallest, most regal wolf I'd ever seen. Massive and proud, holding his head straight and high in superiority. He was not the same wolf that ran here with me. Some magic had transformed him to pure power. He was exquisite even to my untrained eye. Men started dropping to the ground, transforming into their wolf counterparts. Each wolf turned his way and bowed in submission. Wolf and N howled again to the skies, a sound so blaring I nearly wanted to cover my ears. But I didn't. Because I could understand it. I recognize your acceptance. I will be your king. I will fight for you. I will honor you. Howls rose from the crowd, but more than that. From mountains and valleys beyond. I couldn't even tell how far the signals carried back. But it was clear. His howl was heard for miles, maybe even traveled over the whole planet. He trotted up the stairs and I had to crane my neck to look at him. A smile came to my face. He was beautiful, but N transformed human right there and grabbed my hands. When he looked into my eyes, my lips parted in time with his. Something cracked inside of me like a glow stick, the brightness now seeping through every muscle, every tissue, every bone. I felt the law click into place that he would be my forever, someone to care for me and his child. Someone to love and cherish me, and someone I could do the same for. He was my choice. A wide beam filled his face, lighting his eyes, and he pulled us tight, chest to chest, eyes still to mine. His large hand threaded into my hair and held the back of my head. I haven't stopped seeing into him and the magic and soul that were churning inside. His glance dipped to my lips, and as he leaned forward, my eyes finally closed in wait. He brushed his lips over mine and whispered, "Ma'atspai, my fated mate. White splashed around me and my wounds spawn with the beat of the honey techno music the DJ was playing." Chapter 37, Queen. Human cheers rose into the sky as wolves from the crowd transformed back, and then N's lips finally parted from mine. I beamed around the area, and even some of the kidnapped women were trying to smile. "Your queen." Then N knelt to me, and the gathered men followed. Women, unsure of what else to do, and embarrassed at their states of dress, sank to their knees as well. "You guys need to help them." "Not to bow to me." I eyed it red nervously, looking over the desolate women. Then N's loving eyes gazed up to me. His face sparkled with joy, like he was tasting a delectable dessert. "Yes, Eleanor, we do. You are the most precious jewel to this world. We will protect you as the most magnificent treasure you are." I waved a hand out over the crowd. "But there's lots of women here." He grinned, following my wave, and stood. "Earth women," he called in the voice of radiance. "You will no longer be treated as possessions. You are the royalty of this world. You will be protected even as my queen will be." His eyes pointed on the guards that had kept the women in chains, buying them garments and food. Now their eyes widened with the underlying threat and ran inside to complete the order. Then trained on other guards standing by, and disposed of the previous king's body. He softened to the crowd. "My cuck, you are dismissed." Feet began shuffling every which way. "Girls," I called out, "you are welcome inside with your mates." Some women smiled and instead walked toward homes, but others took my offer inside, led away by a man or two. "You could have two mates." I spoke, shocked, watching us set retreat after an African beauty. Her second man with wide shoulders turned and winked. "No, but I'm her protector." "What do you mean?" He stopped before going inside. "Bisa is my brother's mate. I won't let anything happen to either of them." I smiled, but it turned into a frown. "How did she get caught by Maza?" His shoulders slumped. "The king had been searching for all the women. We were commanded to let her go. We did." "You didn't fight for her?" I asked, bewildered and annoyed. Then N grabbed my hand and offered softly. "Of course they wanted to fight for her. They were commanded, El. They couldn't disobey." "What do you mean?" I searched then N's face. "An alpha command is uncontestable. If your alpha gives an order, you must follow." "You must follow." My eyes widened with realization, and I gasped. When he forced me to walk to the stage, then N nodded. "That was an alpha command, yes." "That's horrible." Then N's brow pushed together, not recognizing why it would be. "It is life." "Life?" "Well, what about free agency?" "What is free agency?" He looked equally confused. "On Earth, we can choose to follow the command or not. We have rules. We have rulers. But each person must decide to follow them or to suffer the consequence. But it is still a choice." The other man slipped away into the mansion, following his brother, as then N and I spoke to each other. "What is the consequence?" he asked, 1,000 more questions darting through his eyes. I shrugged. "Depends on the violation. A slap on the wrist. To prison. To death." He nodded, and then as another thought passed, he grinned, taking me into his arms and pushing me against his chest. "Free agency." He tested the words. "Was given to you to choose me as your mate." I tried to bite the smile away. "Exactly. I chose my own future." "Doesn't that go against Moon Goddess's path for us?" He hesitated in some act of blasphemy. Slipping my arms around his shoulders, I shrugged. "Didn't you say that your Moon Goddess was the one that chose me? The one that brought me here?" "Maybe this is the reason. We need to let the people choose. To let them have their agency." He grinned a wide smile and kissed my forehead. "Alpha King the Nen, A jovial male voice sung from the thinning crowd. We turned to see Maeve guiding a small group towards the steps. Maeve was the heaviest muscled guy I'd ever seen before, and I grinned at his thick eyebrows and wide nose. The Rock had nothing on him. His returning smile flashed a pointed canine. He was guiding his group. Molly was now wearing a dress of leather and carrying a toddler girl with dirty blonde pigtails on her hip. A beautiful red-headed woman with pixie-cut short hair and a similar dress followed. She was holding a toddler boy. A tall, lanky man with a softly toned build and curled dark hair had a hand to her back. And Thann trailed the end, guiding a small earth beagle on a leash. Oh my gosh. A dog. I raced over to it, being so excited to see a precious pet, and it started barking up a storm. Then N grabbed my hips and held me back before I got too close. "Elle, be careful." I fought back his hold, but he kept tight. Then N, "You can't be serious. It's a puppy." My eyes trained on the dog with near tears of delight sparkling in them. I miss my dog so much. The red-headed woman chuckled nervously. I assumed she was Lisette. "His name is Oscar. He got transported with me when we went on a walk. He's usually pretty friendly." Teo eyed me with the brightest hazel eyes I'd ever seen, the first on the planet to have a different color than the dark browns and blacks I'd usually seen. They were mesmerizing. "He's usually friendly to humans. Lucius not." "What?" Lisette hushed the dog's barks and gazed me over. "What do you mean she's not?" He knelt down and bowed himself to me. "Alpha Queen Elle is a werewolf." "That's Spidey. My faded Nate." White splashed around me and my wings spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. She cried and set the boy down to play with the dog and stared me over. "There's no wolf women." "You already said so." Thann said she was human. Thann let the toddler take the leash. "I did." "She was." "I don't understand." I chuckled. "Remember our werewolf stories?" I had Thann here turn me. I held my shirt collar to the side to show the pair of crescent scars on my shoulder. She twisted to KO and hit him. "That's a possibility. Why didn't you tell me?" He laughed and tried to defend himself. "I'm learning this with you." I shrugged. It was an emergency. We guessed. Maeve cut in, rubbing at Molly's back. "We are glad it worked out if you were able to save my mate. This is Molly. And my children. In-law and Sarah." He looked at his family with such adoration I swooned for Molly. And I realized I recognized her. "Molly Martin." I cried out. Yes, the platinum blonde dyed hair showing dirty blonde roots. The average build that hit a Hollywood skinny body. The vibrant blue eyes and wide lashes. She led down little Sarah, who immediately clung to her leg and held a hand out to me. "I take it you've seen one of my movies." I nodded, a little starstruck, and shook her hand. "Wow. Yeah, you've been in like the last for MCUs. You're famous." She released my hand with a smirk. "Well, I may be on Earth, but it seems like you're the famous one here. Who knows if Azane walk you Duma?" Oh, I blushed. I guess. That was quite an entrance. You can imagine how angry the king was when I wasn't showing him my magic powers. My head bobbed as my eyes searched over her multicolored bruises. I bet. She stood back into Mate's arms. "So, did the country go crazy when I disappeared?" Thinking back, I nodded. "Yeah, it was all over the internet. They were guessing you got kidnapped and murdered." She laughed. "Well, not murdered, but kidnapped to some otherworldly werewolf planet. Wow." "So a movie star," I commented almost to myself. I looked at her. That's why then N knew the word movie. I guess with all the English words he knew. "I took you to be a teacher." She shrugged. "I carried my translator in my purse for a few days, not knowing what it was, and we just learned it by repetition until we ran in to listen. She had hers on. Then the boys wanted to know a bunch of English words, and we just taught them for fun. Liz is French, so they know some French too. Oh Chen, I recollected and looked at Oscar. That's what Thann called my dog when he saw the picture. I grinned at the young in-law playing with the sweet puppy. But as I watched the boy, I started counting the timeline. I had been on this planet for just about 6 weeks. Newscasts of the missing Molly Martin were only a month or two before my transport here. How long have you been here? I gazed at the small children. Children. Toddler-aged children. She hummed. I guess 3 months. I've stopped keeping track. What? I cried, but. 3 months. I stared at the obvious mini-made into your old form. She chuckled and grabbed Sarah back up in her arms. You mean, how do I have toddlers? I nodded. The group laughed as if I was out of some joke. She finished and hugged against the girl. Well, she pointed a thumb at Maeve. Look at him. He's all 100% man candy. I took that man to bed before the sun went down my first day. And out popped these two a month and a half later, and they're still growing like crazy. A month and a half. I nearly choked, face surely going white. A month left. I'd have a baby in a month. I nearly passed out. Her brow-eyed and then a knowing smirk came over her when she looked at my covered belly. How far along are you? I held my hands across myself and then N's hand rested on my belly, answering for me. 17 days. I stared back, shocked to him. You have it by days. He kissed my cheek. Of course. It made my stomach tighten with a butterfly's flight. I grinned at him in happiness. It felt exactly like how having a soulmate should feel. I leaned up to kiss him. I had very nearly forgotten we were surrounded by his friends. His pack. When Lisette snickered. You two are sluts. Excuse me. I objected, eyes striking on her. I saw Ko's hand tighten on her shoulder, glancing to the face beside me. Liz, no. Her glance followed his and she backtracked. Oh no, I didn't mean. I turned to see what was going on and then N was baring his teeth. I smacked him before he could punch her like he's hit Kane. She continued nervous and looked to the ground like a submission. I just meant that it's barely been weeks you to know your mates. I'm sorry. It's okay, Lisette. I guess it was a bit soon. I forgave. Big guy here is just a bit touchy about his new whiffy. He twisted to me. Insult forgotten. Whiffy. I shrugged. Matey sounded a pirate. Just the girls chuckled. Benen's face was all confusion, so I winked. I'll tell you later. Speaking of, Benen grinned. Do you still have your cell phone with you? Oh, I tapped my pouch. Yeah, but the charger is still back in the cave. There's not much juice left. Let me see it. He held his hands out. You have a charger. Molly squealed. I nodded and dug the cell out of my pouch, unlocked it, and placed it in that N's open palm. I only have an iPhone adapter, but you're welcome to use it if you have one. Oh, thank you. She leapt at me and squeezed me in a hug. Lisette stepped forward and touched my shoulder. Can I use it too? I want to see a picture of my mom. I grinned. Of course. It's solar so it doesn't charge fast, but we can all use it. Here it is. Then N grinned and handed me back the cell. I chuckled at the starting picture of the video he'd seen so many times the last couple weeks. Your war stories. War stories. He asked with a confused smirk. He pointed and pressed the play button. Just watch. Video then N started his monologue into the camera. This time it wasn't gibberish. Female. When you're finally able to understand this, know that it was fate that brought us together. You do not know yet that no females of my kind are left, but the fates have shown kindness to me. For the moment I saw you fighting the dragon, I knew you were meant to be mine. Your beauty and strength are exquisite. Your ingenuity astounds me. Know this. I will do anything to make you mine. Elle, will you be my wife? I turned to him, my mind rolling with the charming, recorded words, and he dropped to one knee and grabbed my hands around the cell. Eleanor cased evens. My Spidey, my fated mate. Lights flashed around me and my will spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. My Spidey, my fated mate. Lights flashed around me and my will spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. I want you to always be mine. Will you be my wife? I nodded, eyes glossy, and leapt into his arms. Yes, chapter 38, choice exactly 1 year later. We sat in our thrones looking down into the village square. It was filled with vendors and families like never before. The city had thrived since we took over. Then Anne held my hand as we watched our children. The two were playing with the now many other littles, a simple game like soccer. Kala looked at his sister and then up at us. He signed play ball with a laughing grin and an ensign back a living gesture. We could communicate easily now that I had my own ring back, but signing was still part of our days. Kala and Kami seemed nearly 6 years old by Earth years, but I was told that the quick aging was normal for werewolf children. They'd age rapidly to look about 25 and then stop for a century. A century. 3 centuries. What would it be like to live for 300 years? Then squeezed my hand, and I smiled up to him. It will be wonderful. He spoke to my mind. Ever since he marked me as full mates, we could communicate in our minds in human form as well as wolf form. It was one more thing to bring us together, as if 6 children wouldn't be enough. I placed a hand on my very pregnant belly and looked over to the napping 3-year-olds, cuddling into each other. We came to find out that every wolf, human pregnancy was about 40 days and always boy-girl twins. If the act was wanted by the woman, it ended in a pregnancy, birth control or not. As I already knew, and a body wouldn't get to many weeks' rest before pregnancy occurred again. King Matzabal did try to use some of the girls as well as roaming rogues, but apparently if the act was unwanted, the men could not perform. It made me giggle to think back to my near assault. I wasn't worried about how he was acting, only to get away. But he probably was having a problem coming to attention that discouraged him. Oh well, he didn't have to be worried about his dysfunction for too long. Then N says that Moon Goddess would not have brought us all here just to be assaulted. So Goddess actually did care about individual choice. The women had to choose to allow the mate's hip to occur. After our inauguration, we found over 100 other Earth females around the planet, bringing the total close to 150. Some were gravely injured that we did our best to help, but a sorrowful total of 30 passed away in one way or another. Others followed me and became werewolves themselves. Though not all of the 100+ chose to be mates, all women were loved, cared for, and well protected. Then N and his new council deliberated for days and he finally came out to give his one and only alpha command to the greater people. It was for them to have their own free agency, and no longer controlled by alpha commands. He set up a similar set of rules and consequences, letting the council and people vote as much of Earth's government sacked. Each pack had their own continued alpha, but now the reign was more benign like a mayor. They couldn't use the alpha command but were in charge of rules. I was proud of the N, and his people had a new respect and love for their alpha king. Alpha king. Alpha queen. Beta king called out, running through the square in fear. Then N stood, nerves flaring. Yes came bowed at the steps. The men, the unmated women. They are all gone. Roges. Then Hen flushed. Send your team. Find them. But a small voice whispered to me, like real words on the wind. No, I told them, through their continued planning. Both turned to me, and I looked out over the women ending to business around the square. They've been sent back to Earth. Mad Spidey, my fated mate. Lights flashed around me and my wind spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. Kane asked, baffled. I smiled a greeting to a waving woman hanging laundry up on a rope, a baby tied to her back, another nestled in the laundry basket. The words came out like I was reading a book. We were supposed to be here for a year to reap a pudel. Those that chose not to stay were sent back home. They're back on Earth. Then it asked. Yes, I nodded serenely. I was still there. That meant that my choice, conscious or not, was to stay on the werewolf planet. I grinned up at Thann and he brought me out of my chair and clear into his arms. Then you will always be mine, my darling mate. He kissed me with so much adoration it could have filled 1,000 planets. And you will always be mine. He glanced over our children and put his hand on my belly to calm the new ones. Eleanor, you and our children are the richest blessing any alpha could ever have. The stories were true. You have made me the richest, most powerful man alive. The end epilogue. 19-year-old Caitlin Carter spent a year on a distant planet, but as suddenly as she was taken, she was returned. It was true. Caitlin's parents escorted her from the facility. She kept her head down and shoulders hunched at the chaos that surrounded her. Hundreds of people shouted her name. Everyone from admiring fans to news crews and paparazzi pushed at police barriers to get to her. She had been in the mental hospital for 2 weeks after her reappearance of over a year and spouting crazy tales of werewolves, flying beasts, moon goddesses, and new planets. But when similar stories started surfacing from all over the globe, she was finally released. Caitlin, a news reporter shoved a microphone in her face. What was it like on the werewolf planet? She slowed and tentatively answered back, glancing down at her to missing fingers. Care of some water demon. It was scary. A dark-haired reporter shoved in. Miss Carter, is it true that the women that remained are being kept by werewolves as pets? Caitlin's hunched shoulders straightened, and she stopped letting her parents guide her through the crowd. Of course not. They were very happy as couples. The dark-haired reporter continued. And you didn't choose to get married to one of the monsters. Caitlin scowled. They weren't monsters. They were very kind, and protected us from bad stuff. Another microphone was shoved in her face. What kind of bad stuff? A heavily accented feminine voice turned her from the pushy reporters. Miss Carter. When Caitlin looked, it was a petite woman, older than her by 10 years and unmistakably Oriental. Hello, Caitlin answered hesitantly. The woman was not holding a microphone, but instead a picture. Was my sister one of the transported? Caitlin took the picture. An Asian woman with dark brown hair and waves down her back, wispy bangs, tight sweet ties, and thin frame filled the photo. She was wearing light blue doctor scrubs. Caitlin had no memory of the girl inside, ready to give the bad news, when the woman spoke again. Her name is Gia. Gia Pack. Gia, Caitlin whispered to herself. She had seen the name on the monument the king and queen built for all the fallen. Gia had been transported, but she was now gone. How was she supposed to tell this woman that her sister had died a horrible death on the alien planet? She couldn't. A forced smile spread Caitlin's lips. Yes, Gia. She sounded sincere and handed the photo back to the expectant woman. Gia is there. She stayed behind. The woman's eyes glistened. Her accent was even stronger with the held-back emotion. She is there. She is happy. Caitlin nodded and the woman bowed deeply. Thank you. Thank you, Miss Carter. Caitlin, unsure of how to respond to the new custom, gave a half-hearted bow back. When the encounter was closed, Caitlin's parents tried again to shoo her away from the crowd. They pressed her through the hundreds of photo flashes and chanting people to get to their waiting car. As her father opened the car door for her, a couple in their late 40s pushed between the reporters and stopped as far as the guardrails would let them. Eleanor Stevens. Caitlin stopped her father from pressing her inside and turned to the couple. What? The blonde woman had tears streaming down her face. The man had a soft beard that held emotions against his face. He spoke for the two. Our daughter's name is Eleanor Stevens. Was she? He left the thought open. Caitlin knew that name. Everyone on the planet knew and worshipped that name. Queen Elle. She was just. She was loyal. She was a wonderful woman on the side of both humans and werewolves. A friend to all. A magnificent ruler. Caitlin smiled at the many memories of working alongside her in gardens, tending to children, and even helping Queen Elle prepare food for the hurt and afflicted. Max by my sated mate. White splashed around me and my will spun with the beat of the heavy techno music a DJ was playing. Stephen's face held hope at the smile on Caitlin's lips, and Caitlin nodded, turning fully to the couple. Yes, Eleanor is there, she. But Caitlin didn't know how to describe how really amazing Queen Elle was. She's the most joy-filled heroic woman there. She paused for a moment before adding, she does like to get her way though, mister. Stevens gave a slight chuckle. That sounds like her. Caitlin looked to the couple and wondered how much to tell them. Even the crowd around her that once chanted her name stood silent. Microphones all turned her way. Eleanor is known on the werewolf planet as. She took a breath and continued. Queen Elle. The alpha female of the whole planet. Her and Alpha Kingman and have 4 children. All beautiful, and she's carrying to more. And they are the most amazing people anyone could ever meet. Their hearts are filled with so much love for all. She looked to the parents. You would be proud of her, Mrs. Stephen's tears trickled down her face, whispering about children. And Mr. Stephen's face held a noble smile. She's happy. Caitlin nodded. She's very happy. She gave a gentle chuckle, her own eyes glistening with the longing spilling from Elle's mother. She does miss you very much, though. And her farm. She talked about it often. Are her chickens okay? Elle's mother gave a hard laugh of mixed emotions and wiped the fresh tears away. Yes, yes. The farm is being taken care of. Her brother took over responsibility and we all pitched in after she went missing. Everything is fine. All her animals are fine. Caitlin nodded. That's good to know. Caitlin's father interrupted, gesturing to the open car door. Catted us time to go. Right, she answered, ready to live her life again, see her friends and go to college, achieve all her dreams, and ducked into the vehicle. But at the last second, she instead turned back to Elle's parents and held out a golden banded aquamarine ring. Elle was so kind to us all. I want you to have this. It was how we could all speak with one another on the planet. It translated every language. Only, since I got back to Earth, it doesn't work anymore. I want you to have it. A thank you for Elle taking care of us all. Elle's mother lovingly took the gift and smiled at her. Thank you, you precious girl. She then pulled Caitlin into a hug and whispered to her. Thank you for this last link to my daughter. Caitlin embraced her back. You're welcome, Mrs. Stevens. Elle's mother then stood back and let Caitlin into the car. Her and her husband waved as the car drove away. The mass of reporters then converged on them, shouting questions about the alleged werewolf queen, when she placed the ring on her finger, and gave her inner thought to the stone. I miss you, honey. Then she heard a voice in her mind like an echo in an empty room, Mom. Is that you? Thanks a bunch for joining me on this tryst with a werewolf. I hope you had an amazing time exploring this mysterious world with me. Make sure to subscribe, leave your comments and likes, and I'll see you in the next tryst. Bye for now.